So today we're going to make nature journals. Nature journals are a really cool way for you to sort of track observations and things you notice in nature. I'm going to tilt my camera down a little bit. And that's so you can sort of see what I'm doing. So I have a couple pieces of paper here that are stacked. I'm going to start with white pieces of paper. If I had a piece of construction paper, I might add one of those to the bottom of my stack just to have some nice color. But if you don't have any, you're like me, that is okay. The first step is you want to, as neatly as possible, try to fold it in half along this long side here. And we want to keep it as neat as possible so the edges line up. But if it doesn't line up perfectly, that is totally okay. So we can go ahead and fold it and then try to get a nice crease there. And like I said, if you had a piece of construction paper or something that's colorful, you could add a second or another piece of paper on the outside, and that might be able to act as your cover.
Nice. Nipun's got it going on over there with the construction paper.
Nice.
Love it.
So once you have it folded, I have this nice thing that sort of looks like a book, and it's got a bunch of different pages. And then we need a way of attaching them, because right now all these pieces of paper would just sort of slide around. So I'm going to use my stapler, and I'm going to add a couple of staples along this folded edge, and I'm going to try to make sure that my pages are lined up as strong as they can or as straight as they can. So I'm going to add a couple staples. Sometimes you got to go a little harder than you thought just to make sure that staple goes in. You can add a few staples, and it is okay. I just tried to evenly space mine, but it didn't quite work out. And you should definitely be careful. I said careful of your fingers. That's right. Thanks, Emily. So we have our book set up now. We have these nice pages in here. How's everyone's journal looking so far? I got a thumbs up, I think, from Dexter. Arlo, Nippon. Oh, did you add some construction paper on the outside? That is really nice. Now, my book is pretty much nicely constructed already. It's not going to fall apart, but maybe I don't like the way these staples look. And if you don't mind, that is okay. But if you do mind, you can cover them up with some tape. And I just have some plain masking tape here. But I know sometimes people have really colorful pieces of tape. You can use that too, but this step is totally optional. I'm going to pull a long strip, and I'm going to try not to let it stick on itself, because that's always sort of bummer, and it makes it a little messy. And I'm going to try to put it just along this edge that has the staples so I can cover up those staples. I just want to try to keep it nice and straight on this, but again, if it's a little messy, that is totally okay. And I ended up grabbing way more tape than I needed, but that is okay. I can save this extra tape to use for another part of this project. I'm gonna, I knew I had scissors here somewhere and they walked off on me. That's okay, I can tear this tape. All right. Does anybody else have a journal? I'm going to tilt my camera up so I can see all of you. Does anyone else have a journal nice and stapled and bound up? Nippon, do you want to show us your journal?
Yes, Nippon.
We don't have a stapler, so we can't staple this.
That is okay. The nice thing is, if we get it nice and set up, you could, one option would be to go through, and if you have a glue stick later on, you could sort of glue the edges together. Or if you want, you can always start it now, and then later you could staple it when you have a stapler you can find. The keeping it stapled keeps it all together. It's easier to make sure you don't lose a page, but if you're really careful, you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, you can just have it as like a folder of pages. That's okay too. You'll still be able to flip through it.
That is exactly right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yours looks like it's coming out awesome. Dexter, how's your journal looking? Is it all bound up nicely? I got some nodding. Arlo?
Arla's working on the last stats. Oh, lovely purple cover there.
You're all
I
making me
like
very
it.
jealous of your cool colored paper. I didn't have any in my house, so I just have this plain paper. You could also, if you wanted to, I thought about using, I have this graph paper. That could be really cool to have too for some drawings. But you can always make more of these. I'm gonna tilt my camera down again. All right. So right now, this is gonna be my cover. And you could decorate your cover now. I might wait a little bit, but if you wanted to, there's all sorts of things. Maybe you just write, I might write Peter's Nature Journal, or I might wait until I have a cool drawing I want to do or something like that. But I'm going to start by making my first entry. And I like these journals because they're nice and well bound, but sometimes when you open it up, you're going to have to fold this piece of paper so it lies nice and flat. Otherwise, it ends up sticking upright, and that's okay. All right. So nature journals are really great. Like I said, you can add observations or things you see, and really it's totally up to you what you include in your journal. I know a couple of weeks ago, I think Emily taught us how to do leaf rubbings, where you put a leaf underneath a piece of paper and then rub a pencil on it. And you can see the texture of that. You could do one of those. You could write down observations that you make. You could press a flower and include that. You could take a picture, make a photograph, or take a photograph. You could write poetry, or you can even just have lists of plants or animals that you observe. There's all sorts of different stuff. Today, I'm going to do a drawing of this plant. It's sort of like nature. It's in my house today. Does anyone else have a cool object from nature that they're going to draw? Nipon, what do you think? Do you want to share our object or your object with us?
Yesterday I went for a hike in the woods and I found a green pine cone.
That is super cool. I think that's a great thing for you to pull out of nature to make some observations and drawings of.
It's unusual.
That is really unusual. I can't wait to hear what observations you make about that. Dexter, do you have a house plant there? That's really cool. I like that. It's a lot bigger than my plant. Arlo, how about you? Do you have a cool object you want to share?
Oh, I want a copy.
I didn't quite hear you, Arlo. Can you say that one more time?
I don't have any nature stuff, so I might have to go out and grab one.
That's okay. You can grab one, or like I said in the beginning, if I didn't have any nature stuff, I might do this little plastic dinosaur I have, or some sort of animal. It can be any sort of object.
Okay. Or you can even just look out that window behind you, Arlo, and check out some of the trees from a distance. Sometimes I like to compare things from a distance and then go up close and look at them and see the details.
Yeah. You don't have to be able to touch it or have it in your house. Sometimes it's nice to have that, but you can always do it from a distance, like Emily said, and then check it out later. So I'm going to start by drawing or trying to draw my object, and I have my 2 pages here. I might start right on this one, and I know from experience that I am not very good at drawing, but it's totally okay because this is just for me, and hopefully none of you will judge me. I don't think so. I think we're all pretty open with our drawing here. So I might start from the bottom and work my way up. So I'm going to start, I notice I have a little clay pot here. So maybe I'll start with that, even though that's not really the part of nature that I'm most interested in. It's maybe a nice place for me to start. And you can start wherever you want on your object. I don't know if you can all hear it, but I have another type of nature next to me, which is my dog, who's just sitting here in the sunshine, sort of groaning because I'm not petting her instead of drawing. So I'm going to draw my little clay terracotta pot here. And when you start drawing, this one's a little simple, but it's good to sort of make some observations and think about little details that you see. So when I start on my plant, I could just do this all green, but something I'm observing on my plant is I have these little light green, yellowish spots. So you can go ahead and, or I could add that. Other little details, maybe there's little spikes here. I don't know if you can see these little spikes. You're gonna have different things than I have, but that is okay. Let's see if I have a green that will work for this. Looking through my colored pencils. This might be a little too light, but that's okay. So I'm gonna move my plant aside so you don't have to see.
Do you have a question, comment, thing to share?
I figured out that my pine cone, my green one, is a little bit sticky, and I drew it just like this.
Oh, awesome. I love that you're making observations with your sense of touch, too. I think you could probably do a leaf rubbing with that pine cone if you put it under a page and sketched over it. That might help reveal some other details, too.
Yeah, and actually, since you're drawing, you were much faster than I was at drawing, which is great. You can start on one of the next steps that I like to include, which is below my drawing or on the next page. You can start writing down some observations that you make. So you noticed it was sticky. I might notice that it's a little bit pointy on mine. You can think about how it feels when you touch it, although you want to be really gentle on a plant. You could also think about how large it is. If you have a ruler or another way of estimating the size, you could always include that. You can, maybe it smells a particular way. Maybe if you have a flower, it has a cool scent. So you can really think about all the different observations you can make about your object. If I had been using, I have a little antler here I could have tried to draw. Maybe I would focus on the texture because it's nice and coarse. So I'm just gonna keep drawing mine. Trying to sort of get the general structure of it. But again, this is just for me. I'll hold it up for you. It sort of looks like this plant, right? Close-ish. So I'm gonna keep coloring mine in. I'm assuming that silence is all of you thinking I am a great artist. I will take that. So I'm gonna keep coloring my basic plant in here. Now I want to add these little light green specks on it. I don't think I have a light green that's lighter than this, so maybe I will, maybe I'll use a little yellow, and that's okay. It sort of shows up.
Dexter, what are you doing with that picture? You took a picture of your plant, right?
Oh. Yeah, I was going to take a picture with the Polaroid camera, but I realized that it was out of film, so I couldn't.
Oh no, that's a really good idea too, though. You can always go out into nature and take pictures of objects and then put those into your journal. It's nice to observe, make some other observations and write those down too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you have a way to take an actual hard copy picture rather than just one on a phone or a computer, because then you can tape in your photo into your journal. And maybe you could do a drawing next to it, or you could just include the photo. I think photography is great, but I also notice that when I'm drawing something, I pay extra close attention to the details. So I'm almost done with my little drawing here. I'm gonna add in, I notice I have some gray pebbles in here, so maybe I'll add some pebbles in there. All right, so this is my drawing, and now I wanna keep track of those observations, because it's nice to include some other details that I can't tell from my picture. So I want to remember this plant. So maybe I will say, let's grab I'm going to use another pencil. I'm going to say that it had a smooth clay pot, and there are some sharp little pieces of gravel in the pot. Maybe my drawing probably doesn't convey that information. And then I can really start thinking about my plant. What does it feel like? My leaves are smooth leaves, but they have little teeth on them, little spikes. Can anyone think of another way I could make an observation of my plant? Anything I'm missing that you've tried with your object? Deepan, what do you think? What could I do, or what have you done?
You gotta unmute yourself, bud.
I made a title for my log, and it's called My Green Pine Cone.
You made a title for your drawing?
And the observations that I made was that in some parts it's a little yellow, sticky, green, and brown, and it's 11 inches long. I took my ruler.
I love those details. I like that you noticed that it wasn't all one color that you noticed. Even though it was a green pine cone, you had some yellow in it. I also am going to use your idea. I have a ruler here too. I'm going to measure the height of my plant. So my plant is 10.5 inches tall. So maybe I'll add a detail. I could either write it at the bottom, or maybe I'll even add it to my drawing. So I included that little detail in there because I thought that was a cool thing to include. Does anyone else have some details or some observations they want to share?
Good.
If you could just take a picture on an electronic and then print it on the printer, you could just do that.
Is that what you ended up doing?
What?
Yeah, so he's taken a picture with a phone, I think, and then printed it out. Now, Dexter, your picture's in black and white, right?
No, but...
So are you gonna make some notes about the colors and what you're seeing in detail on your journal?
Well, yeah, but I could just look at the colors on the actual plant.
Right, but if you go out for a walk or something and you take a picture, you're going to need to remember it later, right? You won't always have your natural object with you. That's why we write our observations down.
You know what could be really cool, Dexter, is if, I don't know how dark the photograph ended up printing out, but maybe you could color on top of it.
I know.
So you have the outline and then you draw it in with the green of the leaves, if that works.
It did end up pretty dark, though.
It did? Well, then, yeah, maybe right
here.
Well, I still could write down the colors.
Yeah, maybe just label it.
Yeah,
right,
so you can maybe draw arrows and say, you know, this leaf is green or this bottom was brown. You could label it that way too if you don't feel like coloring it. The nice thing is you want a place to record your observations. Something else I might do for me, especially if I was going out on a hike or somewhere else out in nature, I might include at the top of my page, I might include the date. So what today is. So I'm going to write July 2nd, 2020. And then I might say where I observed this. So I'll write my house. But that way, if I'm looking back at this and it was probably something that I didn't have in my house, like where Nippon found the pine cone, maybe you can include that detail. You can go ahead and keep including different things. This is a really nice way to record your time in nature, because I know when I go for hikes, sometimes I totally forget when I get home. I sort of remember that I had a nice hike, but I don't remember all the cool things I saw. And this will let me keep track of my observations.